Today's the 18th of December. My shift, 12-hour day, started at 6 o'clock this morning on the run down to shutting number 1 machine for the rest of my working life, more than likely. We shut the machine at 7:26 this morning. We've all been busy cutting off the machine clothing, the felts, the wire, cleaning up, removing the carrying ropes, preparing the machine to be mothballed.
When I came down here first, like to meet Dad from work, probably about 4:30 in the afternoon, coming down the hill to see the paper mill with all the steam coming out. There was over 300-400 people working down here. So when people clocked out, there'd be a mass of people coming out the door, all clocking out at the same time.
I can remember my very first day like it was yesterday. It's stuck in my memory forever. It was a day spent completely working in the engineering workshop with one of the fitters, and we were repairing a rotor from one of the pulpers, and we spent the whole day with a 9-inch grinder putting an edge on that rotor basically, so it broke the pulp down in the pulper. And that was my first day, all day, doing exactly the same thing. And I thought to myself, what have I let myself in for?
My earliest memories of the mill is with my father, because he used to work here as a long distance lorry driver and then ended up in shunting and sheeting down in the mill itself eventually. And it was him who got me the job.
Big, the place was big. There's more machines than there is now, so it was rather a big site.
It was very big, it was quite daunting.
Looking at the paper mill, it was a massive, massive site. And when I came to the site for an interview, I actually had to go to the engineering department, see the engineering director as he was then, and I couldn't find the door into the building. It just looked so big and so daunting, and I thought, how am I supposed to get into this building?
I remember the first day I started here, my dad was the manager here. And he said, there's a job for you at the mill if you want it, be there tomorrow morning and see Colin Hill. Goes into Tiven, has the haircut, shave, new shirt, trousers, polish the old boots, turns up here at 8 o'clock, tie on, really smart. He said, where the hell have you been? You were supposed to be here at 6 o'clock this morning, come with me. And he'd take me down the far end of the mill. He said, this is 3A pulper, you press this button, moves the conveyor on. When it gets to 3, stop the conveyor, wait 4 or 5 minutes, press this button until it says empty, press this button to fill it up. And my first day at the mill, I was stood out there at the pulper while everybody else is going around in their overalls and scruffy boots. I'm stood there, shirt and tie on, hair all tidy, nice clean trousers, shiny shoes. And everybody's sort of looking to say, who's that idiot?
I've worked here 41 years, just over. I work as number 5 machineman. I was sort of conveyorman stroke pulperman. I did both. 3A pulper is the biggest pulper, and that's the one I wanted to do because I was more physical, more work to do, because I was only young when I came up here then, and I wanted to do more rather than sit down. Because when I came up here first, you were breaking the pulp by hand with a pitchfork. It was called throwing the pulp. It sounds bad, but as I say, it's not that bad, because if you filled it twice in 8 hours, they reckon you worked hard. But, I mean, it was nothing to me. You only broke about 3 bells of it up.
When I started, it was 650 people. There used to be a buzzer go off at 5:45 and people would appear from cracks in the wall that you didn't even know worked at the mill. And we would pay cash wages back then. You got a pay slip with cash. My first ever wages from the mill was £19.56. I opened it up and I went, ah, my God, I'm rich.
I've worked here for 37 years. I've done a fair few jobs in the mill over time, working in the parish for maintenance, working with the instrument mechanics, laying air lines, shunting in the yards, packing, reelerman, reeler assistants, dry end assistants, machineman training, colourman training. Machine went from 315 metres a minute when I first started up to 700 metres a minute at the moment. I think my favourite job out of all the jobs I've done is running the reeler on number 5, especially when it was manually operated. It was more of a challenge back then, trying to keep up and do the job well. The quicker you could do it, the quicker you could get going again, and the quicker you caught up. When I first started, there was no guarding at all. Used to hand feed the machine at the wet end, quite often get your fingers in the nip of the ropes.
And the first time I saw the paper machine, I was like, wow, this machine, this is huge. Oh my God, how do they get that to go, you know, you look at a sheet of paper and you think, that can't be paper, and you, what's that there? Oh, that's the sheet. What is it? Well, it's 35 gram, cigarette paper size. And you go back the next day and you say, wow, that looks a bit different. What are you on? 130 gram. So you see the difference. It was just like this mind-blowing experience of seeing a paper making machine for the first time when you'd never seen one. There was no computer on it. There was no scanner reading the sheet from minute to minute to say, oh, it's now 50 gram, it's now 100 gram, and you know, you want it to be 25 gram. Machineman and dryman's job then was really quite highly skilled, because you couldn't teach someone those skills. They had to know. It was the sort of thing where they touched the sheet and the sheet would be going past at say 150 metres a minute, and they go, a 65 gram boy. And you'd have the reel out, you take it down the lab and test it, and it'd be 65 gram. You're like, how does he know that? And you could always tell a machineman from back then, because all machinemen either a finger or a thumb missing, and all machinemen on those 2 fingers had no fingerprints.
Because when I first started, you used to check the pH of the water, you used to have to check everything, and you had to go on dye courses so you put the right dyes in for the right colours. Because when I first come up here, we did a lot of colours. We had powders, liquid dyes. You mixed the dye. You had steam containers. You warmed the dye up, and you used to warm your soup up. You used to warm everything up there. People's pies and things exploding. And they used to put them on the machine as well, just inside the hood and the heat. Well, I suppose they had to. I suppose there's nothing else to warm it up with at the time. You didn't have microwaves, did you?
I've been here 30 odd years. Done breakfast, which consisted of fried eggs, poached eggs, scrambled egg, bacon, beans, tomatoes, sausage, hash brown, chipped potatoes, mushrooms, black pudding, fried bread, tea, coffee, and then we'd clear out.
I've worked for Wansbrough for 39 and a half years. I'm basically responsible for the production of the paper off the actual paper machine. I've got a team of guys that work with me. It's an interesting job. It's not the sort of job where you go in and you're doing the same thing 9 till 5. The nature of waste paper changes from bale of paper to bale of paper. So as we use it, the paper changes slightly. It might get drier faster, it might be harder to dry. It may be that the burst factor's not as good as it was on the previous machine reel. The best thing that ever happened was the invention of a computer, which basically runs the machine for us. We set it up and tell it what we want it to do, what paper we want, how much moisture we want in it, how wide the sheet's going to be, how fast we want to go, how much steam we want to use. Punch all those criteria into the computer and it looks after it for us, but we have to get it there first.
When you consider the machine runs at 700 meters a minute, that's a lot of paper that can jam up in a few seconds. That's, I think, about 11 meters a second. That's a lot of paper to pull out afterwards. There have been some jam ups where we've had to move rolls to get the paper out and actually sort of start taking the machine apart because it's jammed so solid in the machine. That's rather a drastic situation when you've got to do that. A normal jam up can probably be about 30 to 35 minutes, and if you get a real bad one like that, you're talking hours, and you're working in virtually oven temperatures to do it.
Then we go for lunch, and then it was either roast beef, roast pork, or pork chops, or cottage pie, or shepherd's pie, all made in the canteen. It was all done with fresh vegetables, fresh meat from the butchers.
We've had several fires on the machine before. Initially, if you've never seen a fire on a machine before, it's a bit frightening. But once you get into the routine of knowing what you're supposed to do, you take it more calmly then. But a fire on the paper machine soon goes. You can see a whole section of light within minutes. We've had it to the extent that it's gone up to the roof and across the rafters.
I am the stock preparation operator on Team 4. My job involves running a screening plant for number 5 machine. Basically it goes through a series of screens, taking out any metals, any bits of glass, and then it'll go onto another set of screens which will then take the long fibres from the short fibres, and then they'll separate, go through another screening plant. One will go on the top wire, one will go on the bottom wire, and then it goes on to the machineman then, and then that's all up to him to deal with.
I'm the Environment Officer at Wansbrough Paper Mill, and I have been for 5 years now. My job is wonderful because it encompasses every part of the living mill. So it's looking at sampling all the emissions that we have going out. So that would be your air emissions, water emissions, what's coming in the leat, which is the water that comes in off the river itself and then is channeled along a few fields before it comes into our mill. It's specifically for us, it goes into our pond. So we have to check the quality of that. And in addition, it's all the waste issues we have across the mill. So all the incoming fibre, I have to make sure that all that's as it should be, and all the outgoing waste as well, every last bit, not just our big waste production like our sludge, but also all the little bits and pieces, the metal waste that we have. What I love best about working for Wansbrough Paper Mill is, above all, the people. The biggest challenge, I think, in any environment officer's job actually is to try and help people to understand what it really means to look after the environment whilst you're making something like paper in a heavy industry environment. That's a really challenging thing to do, because a lot of the time what you want to achieve for the environment can actually be causing trouble for the people who you're asking to help you. It's a burden for them, and that's how they see it initially. So it was really exciting to work in depth with the engineers. We had so many new ideas for how we could have looked after the mill in terms of its energy and had a win-win situation. It was really exciting, and it's the creativity. You might think, oh, it's heavy industry, what could really be creative about that? But I have to say, it's one of the places where I've seen the most creativity in my whole working life, I think.
And then I've started making cakes. We still have carrot cake, Victoria sponge, you know, every sort of cake, whatever I made, decided to make. And they were quite popular. I was known as the cake queen because I used to make the cakes and bring them in.
When I first started on the reader as a readerman, there was an old guy who was in charge of the stores, and he was like a really he seemed to be like a really old guy that lived in the back of the stores. I mean, I was 21, and he's like, looked like he was 300. You know what I mean? Trilby cap and the shirt with the holes in it, and a bit of paper bag, and he'd take his bag out and he'd have a sandwich that looked like he'd been eating it for a week. And we used to get these reels, little reels we used to make for bingo cards, and sometimes they wouldn't part, and you bang a wedge in them, and if they didn't go, you just write RTP on the side, return to pulper for repulping. And he come up with me one day and he said, "You're a young fella, me lad. You've chucked out quite a few of the other reels." He said, "I'll give you a lesson. This one's for free, boy." And he said, "Get us a wedge." And he bangs the wedge in, and he took off his trilby out like that, and he said, "You leave that right there where that is now, and I'll be back in a minute." And off he goes. And he used to be a reelerman apparently years ago. Anyway, he goes away and he comes back, picks up his hat, puts it on, and he said, "Now boy, you watch carefully." And he takes a hammer out of his pocket, a proper hammer with a claw on it. Right? And he says, "You watch this." And he goes doink on top of the wedge, and the reel goes bang and comes apart. We've been throwing them out. At that time, when you're 21, this bloke's old, and you chucked out all these reels, you're like, "This bloke's a god. Who is he?" And you know, there was like lots of old guys that knew things like that.
I've worked at Wansbrough Mill under many guises in the engineering department for 37 years. The paper industry is very energy intensive, and a site this size and all the equipment that we've got on site, we're actually using 10.5 megawatts of electrical energy. So to put that into context, if you think of an electric fire, 1 bar electric fire is a kilowatt. So 1,000 of those in a megawatt. So 10,500 electric fires gives you a feel for the amount of power that we would be using on this site. We did have the facility to generate our own power, a steam driven turbine which drove an alternator, and we could generate 6 megawatts of electrical energy. So obviously we still needed to take some from the grid, but that became expensive because of the cost of gas. And that's why we went through the process of installing the low pressure boilers to generate steam at the process requirements. That gave us a saving which paid for the project in a 12-month period. But it's really one of the reasons why we've ended up in the situation that we find ourselves today. You know, the cost of energy for the paper industry is very similar to the issues that the steel industry have. Very energy intensive, high cost, and unlike our colleagues in Europe, where the governments are actually supporting the manufacturing industry, here in the UK it seems to be the other way around, where the generating companies get the support from the government, and poor old manufacturing has to suffer.
If a customer sends my paper back, I take it personally, because I've made that paper and I put everything into making that paper the best I could for them. So there is a lot of pride in what goes out the door. It's not just about producing a product, it's about what you put into that product personally.
It's like one big family. Everybody looks after one another. When I come here first, about 400 people, down to about 170 now. But you knew everybody because of the shift pattern you did. There was nobody really that you disliked. Everybody was sort of looked after one another. If something was going wrong, you would hang on. You wouldn't go home until it was fixed. And that was generally, I would say, with 80% of the people that were here, that they would all hang on if something wasn't right.
I've worked with the guys on my shift for quite a while. I know all the people that I work with, and I consider most of those people, if not all of them, to be my friends. And I work with my friends, and that's quite a big thing to say. You use the term workmates, you really mean workmates, because we go out eating together, we go drinking together. You know, if we go out on a day trip for the, you know, as a group, we always go together, and it's just like a family within the mill.
Oh, the atmosphere there in the canteen was very good. We always used to have a laugh and a joke, especially with the men, and playing pranks. They would do it to us and we would do it to them. And they would always call me the violent one. I'm not really, but that's what they always used to class me as. One day I threw a teapot at them because they got on my nerves. I was a bit of a swearer at them. But it was just all meant in fun. We all had a laugh. If you made their day, they made our day, and we had a long day to work. So, you know, we never fell out really with anyone up there at all.
The community spirit here is something that's really hit me. I came from working in an office environment straight into heavy industry, and it was incredible to see the banter, how people got on with each other, and just the raw energy of it. So when people fall out with each other, they are really angry, they shout, they're right here in your face, and it's absolutely terrifying. So it's kind of a wonderful thing and a frightening thing all at the same time. There's a rawness to it and a reality to it, and I really, really like that a lot. I think it makes Wansbrough something incredible, that here you have the real vitality of people working together. It's honest, it's raw, it's right there as it needs to be to get people to do what they need to do when they need to do it.
My manager is my mate, but if you're going to get a barbican from him, you get a barbican, and it's forgotten. He's still got a job to do, and people respect that the next person up from them's got a job to do. So if I get it in the neck from my manager, my dryman gets it in the neck from me, and the reelerman gets it in the neck from him, and the packer gets it in the neck from him.
The people that I've worked with over the years have made this place really special. It's always been that feeling of being part of a big family, a really big family. It's been very much a feeling of camaraderie. Everybody supports everybody else. There's always somebody who would be willing to help, whether it be something to do with the job or something outside of work. You know, it was like one big family.
The last reel that came off the machine this morning was the last reel of 95 gram brown bag craft to be made in England. It's been processed through the reeler by the reeler crew and sent down to dispatch. It's been a sad day for me because I was here, as I've explained to people before, I was here when they started this machine up, and I was the one to pull the cutter back and shut the machine down. So really, this great big piece of what will probably be now scrap metal in the background is really my baby, because I've worked with her while she was teething, and I worked with her while she was running her best, and now I've worked with her as she shut down for her retirement.
So when the place closes, it won't be so much the work I'm doing or whatever. It'll be all the people, and I mean everybody in the mill really, that I'm going to miss.
I think that I will miss all the banter and making the cakes, and I will miss working with the girls that I work with.
it was always about making paper. There was a product that was being produced, and now there is no manufacturing. There is no steam being produced. There is no machinery running. There's no warmth in any of the buildings, and it's just a really cold, stark place compared to what it used to be.
It was not so much a shock, it was like a dream. Do you know what I mean? When they said we're having a big meeting, we're shutting both machines and we're going to talk to you about the mill. And it was just like, it took a few days for it to actually sink in that it actually, you know, it actually happened after all this time.
It's all very well thinking of how many tons we've actually made, but I'd hate to think how many kilometres we've made, because one reel of 130 gram can have up to 23,500 metres in it. And wind that, you could get to Taunton, I think. And that's just one reel. We make at least 2 an hour, so I'd hate to think how many miles we could have done in the end. I think we could have gone around the moon and back several times.